Hello, I am C3PO, and I believe the storyteller is ready, so let us begin.
So the book of Boba Fett starts off where we have a Boba Fett in a bacta tank as we're seeing the inside of Jabba's palace. He's going through memories and flashbacks of his time as a child and then to his time in the Sarlacc pit. We kind of see how he gets out of that and how he was rescued to a degree by some Tuskens. They kind of imprisoned him in a bit of a camp where he had to fend for himself a little bit and prove his worth. In that same vein, we also flash back to real time where he's now taken over Jabba's palace. He's working with Fennec, and the two of them are having people come by and pay their respects to the new leader of Mos Espa. However, he has a bit of a shady situation with the mayor's representative who kind of wants him to pay him a little bit more respect, and that the mayor maybe isn't on the up and up. We see Boba and Fennec go into town, and everyone there is very respectful and welcoming until they're jumped on their way out of town after leaving a club where Boba was essentially given an entire helmet full of money. They lose that and whatnot. They're jumped outside by kind of these armed bandits of whatnot. Fennec is able to capture one. Boba is injured and goes back to the bacta tank, where he goes back into his fugue state, where he's kind of sleeping and dreaming back to his time in the Tusken camp where he was rescued. And kind of we see a little bit more time of which he rescued a child Tusken, and then that Tusken kind of takes him out to be kind of a slave and dig for water for him. And then they come across this giant beast. Boba wrangles it, and then they come back to camp, and the little boy is able to look like a hero for bringing back the head of the beast. And we don't know necessarily what he's told the people, but some of the elders certainly know the truth, and they respect Boba a lot more for saving this young child from a beast and also being able to wrangle this incredible desert beast and rip its head off in the end.
That's the pilot episode of the Book of Boba Fett, which we've been waiting for pretty much exactly a year when this show was announced at the end of Mando season 2. So with that in mind, we'll say happy holidays. Welcome back to Recorder 66, and welcome back to the age of new Star Wars, which it feels like we haven't been inside for a very, very long time. So this is kind of a unique recording of our show because it is the freshest Star Wars take we will ever have an opportunity to present. Like, I finished watching this episode an hour ago. We're recording in the morning, which is unusual. And so this is going to be a little bit aformatic. We're just going to have an open discussion about how we feel and how we feel other people may feel about this first installment of the Book of Boba Fett. Ross, excellent recap. Thank you very much. How do we feel this measures up to expectations slash expectations? Like, how do you feel about what you thought ahead of time and what you feel now?
It really hit all the beats that I was hoping for and a little bit more. All the things that they've been leading up about, kind of, you're going to see a lot of backstory, and they give you, like, this episode is more backstory than current story. And so like I'm okay with that. Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of what I was expecting. You're able to see Boba's then and now. We're clearly seeing a character change. They don't shy away from the prequels, which is something I was worried about. They literally give it to you in the first 2 seconds of the episode. So they're showing that, okay, this is a full character study, and this is the character's entire arc that we're going to get to know, which I think was really, really important. And so that got me really excited right out of the gate. And then just overall, I mean, I wasn't expecting this to be the kind of show that was going to blow your socks off the same way that some of The Mandalorian has recently. I'm going to have to take a box away from my rabbits right now because they're digging and making a lot of noise. But I thought that in particular, it was a really good start off and a very strong pilot. And you can never expect too much from a pilot. And I think it really knocked it out of the park from my expectations. What about you?
Yeah, I think so too. And I think what you said about how it wasn't going to blow your mind quite the same as Mando did makes sense, because we're not exactly building a whole new world the way we did with Mando. Yes, The Mandalorian exists in the pre-existing Star Wars universe, and it is supposed to kind of imbue the essence of Star Wars, in particular, the original trilogy of Star Wars that we've already seen. But this is starting to exist in Mando's world of Star Wars. I mean, obviously, because it's the same guy who we saw in season 2. but also at the same time, it looked really fresh. Here we start off in Jabba's palace, which is familiar territory. We see parts of Tatooine which are familiar, and other parts which are really interesting. Like, without jumping ahead too much, but we see the Cantina Band in another establishment. They're kind of like upgraded now to a bit of a classier joint.
Well,
And so this is what Star Wars does really well, is showing you the full gamut.
yeah, I thought that was fun because I don't know which member of the modal nodes, or whether it's also like because there's a Bith who's the part of all the modal nodes are Biths, and there's one who's also part of Jabba's band, and then there's also Max Rebo, who looks like fatter, and he's who's the band leader of Jabba's. So I thought that was cool, and everybody's been kind of curious to know if, is he going to come back? And he looked as 80s as ever with like his paper mache sides. It was just terribly perfect.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the flashbacks maybe more than anything. And so really satisfyingly, we open on not the Mandalorian gauntlet busting through the sand, to quote Patton Oswalt. That comes later. But in fact, we actually get to see Boba in a stupor in the intestines of the Sarlacc, which is pretty cool. And he looks over and he sees a stormtrooper there, and the stormtrooper is maybe dead, and he uses some of his gear, of course, to blast his way out. And then, yes, he crawls to freedom, but very quickly his gear is raided by Jawas. So we know that the Jawas were the intermediary between Boba Fett and Timothy Oliphant having the gear. I don't think we realized it happened so immediately. Like, as soon as he gets out of the Sarlacc, he loses that uniform, and he has to.
That's what I expected.
He looks older as Boba circa the era of Return of the Jedi than I would have expected. I think it's only, I guess, 5 years between Return of the Jedi and the Mandalorian timeline, so that's not so unusual. But I guess before we saw Tamora Morrison as Boba Fett, I always pictured the Jango Fett looking guy underneath that uniform. And so in this case, he is bald, and he is quite gruff looking, and he's, more of a beefcake, I think, than he was when he was lean in Attack of the Clones. It doesn't so much matter. He trimmed down for this show, but essentially his body type is the same as Mando timeline Boba.
Yeah, I mean, he has trimmed down a bit, and he does have, like, he looks pretty decent, like shirtless in that regard. He doesn't look like heavy by any means.
No.
But he doesn't look lean. And so overall, you just have to kind of, I guess, put it past the fact that he looks a little older. But one thing they do a really good job of is they're showing, like, that stormtrooper appears to be long dead, because there appears to be some form of gas in the stomach of the Sarlacc, because it doesn't look like he's down there for long, and he's being digested in a way, and he needs to, like, get oxygen, and so there's some form of issue going on down there, and before he blasts his way through, and he's left, like, even wearing his helmet, he's left with all these scars over him, and he needs to, like, take back to baths constantly to continue his healing process, even like 5 years later.
Right. So I think you just hit on something really interesting, because I briefly went into the Reddit discussion thread on the television subreddit, and, like, by and large, the opinion is pretty middling. Like, people are either quite dissatisfied or found this episode rather boring. And, as you said in your recap, it's a pilot. Some things have to be established, but I did not find this episode boring. One of the nitpicks was that there should not be a stormtrooper down there, because there are no stormtroopers on the barge in the opening sequence of Return of the Jedi. And I couldn't tell you whether or not that was true, but the fact that you think the stormtrooper may have been down there for longer than that lends itself to that explanation.
Yes, the stormtrooper's helmet was slightly decayed. The helmet was decayed. Boba's gear is not decayed. Now, it is made of Beskar, so that does make a difference. But no, there was no stormtrooper on that barge, but there are plenty of stormtroopers on Tatooine, and
Absolutely.
so I don't have an issue with that at all.
What do you say to people who found this episode kind of boring? Not to get into the negative too much, but I don't think it was boring, but it's not like there was anything in it that, like, I can't believe I finally got to see.
You're expecting too much, because that's the thing. What I said before about not expecting the same from the Mandalorian, it's because this is what I would have expected from the Mandalorian pilot. And it's a lot like the Mandalorian pilot. And it's a lot like the second episode of the Mandalorian. No, it doesn't have, like, a Grogu reveal, but it is a very similar type show. And this is a pilot. Yes, we've seen this character and it is a spinoff, but that isn't a bad thing. I don't see that as something that should be taken away from it. I still think that this show makes you want more. And we're going to get those later episodes of Mandalorian comparables with later episodes of this show. There were like the last few episodes of season 1 of Mandalorian were probably the best 2 episodes, the last 2 episodes, in my opinion. I think that like there was other phenomenal ones, but of season 1, the last 2 were probably the best 2. Right. And I expect that'll probably be the case with Book of Boba Fett. I expect it's going to continue to build, but we need a foundation. And this episode didn't have much dialogue, and I don't expect there to be a ton of dialogue, but I expect them also to want to get as much background story out of the way as possible. I shouldn't say out of the way, but this particular side of the story is very, I need to know it. Like, that's just how everybody's consuming like this part of the story. Like, I need to understand. You can't leave me not knowing what happened to Boba in this area. But I believe we're going to get time, like flashbacks to between 5 and 6. And I think we're going to be getting different time points that are going to be far less, okay, let me get through this. Okay, let me see. And so it will open our minds a little bit more to, oh my God, what's coming next? As opposed to, okay, this is kind of exactly what I've been expecting for like 40 years. This is what makes sense. Yep. And like, but if they had done it any differently, people would be complaining about that even more. So
well, exactly.
What are
it
they
doesn't have
supposed
to
to
be this big consequential arc, because I think that's what we're used to with Star Wars, where like every little detail is something that kind of recalibrates, recontextualizes your entire understanding of the galaxy far, far away, because we're in constant mystery solving mode with Star Wars. And I think we need to train ourselves away from that and accept that something like the Book of Boba Fett is and always was supposed to be detailing, just like coloring in backgrounds. And also it is the ultimate form of fan service, because one of the top dogs at Star Wars is Jon Favreau. As we've discussed, he's clearly a Boba Fett superhead, and he wanted to make this show. And that's another thing that we're going to have to be okay with, because ultimately it gets us more Star Wars. It's a little a lily pad between bigger, more consequential installments of Star Wars. And also it happens to be pretty fun to watch. Like, you didn't buy a ticket for this. It's exciting. Now, one thing I think is a more justified criticism is that this pilot does not seem to demonstrate that Boba is as ruthless as he's suggested to be in the original trilogy. The whole "I intend to rule with respect rather than fear" is a good line, and certainly it's a good ethos if you're an ethical person. But Boba's got like empathy for child Tuskens now. Like, he does seem to be kind of a softie, no?
I would totally agree. And there needs to be some element of, okay, why? And I think we will see that, because there's going to be so many flashbacks. And so I'm expecting something, a revelation. And I guess maybe this is a good opportunity to fill some people in on some Bad Batch stuff or some additional context. And so people who didn't watch the Bad Batch and don't intend to, but would like to know some additional context from that, this is a spoiler for it, or at least for season 1. And one of the main characters in Bad Batch is a little girl named Omega, and she is a female clone. She's a member of the Bad Batch, which is the special task force of clones. And ultimately, in the end of season 1 of Bad Batch, Tapoca City, which is the main cloning facility and capital of Camino, is destroyed. The Bad Batch, including Omega, are mercenaries, often, well, not mercenaries, but good guy mercenaries who maybe are going to join the rebellion or are going to do some like underground sort of work. But they're completely separated from the Empire. Omega is this very kind and seemingly good, smart, perfect clone. But she is revealed to be an unaltered, other than her her gender, clone of Jango Fett. And she is the Omega to Boba's Alpha. So Boba Fett's name was initially Alpha before he was adopted as the child of Jango, because he was only promised one unaltered clone. And so the Kaminoans made another unaltered clone, but made it altered in just one way and kept it for themselves. And so Boba and Omega are the two closest DNA replicants to Jango, who was the origin of the clone army. And so that makes an interesting angle. The reason why I bring this up is because it also could lend credit to Boba having family. And there was a trailer that was released recently that also shows a character with a red, like kind of cyborg or mechno arm. And if that lends any credit to being similar to a character in Legends, that would be Boba's estranged daughter. And so maybe we're going to be getting some form of Boba has a family, and that he knows about this family potentially at this point, and that is what's changed his ethos and why he's acting in a different way. I'm expecting some form of reason. He even has Fennec. Fennec is somebody who is he's not just a lone wolf anymore. He's got a friend. Now it is his employee and it's a life debt sort of, but it appears like they're on fairly good terms. And so that is something as well that seems a little different now. The sparing the child Tusken was around Return of the Jedi time. So maybe Boba has learned information prior to that, but I think we're going to get more from that. And I think people expecting those kind of reveals in a pilot are expecting way too much.
Absolutely. And by the way, this Omega reveal is really important. And it seems to me that they're going to have to illustrate it again, because there is a huge majority of viewers who will never come to that information because they'll never watch The Bad Batch, but they will watch Book of Boba Fett. And so they're going to have to tell the Omega story differently, perhaps, but yet again in Book of Boba Fett. And that'd be really exciting. I'm kind of interested in the idea of the clone army having custody over this perfect clone, this female clone of Jango Fett, but she's not like a member of the clone army because she's singular. I mean, other than her twin brother. So I don't know anything about her childhood other than what I saw in the pilot, I guess, of
yes.
Bad Batch. But there's something previous to that is obviously an interesting story too.
Absolutely. Now her custody is now with the Bad Batch, from what we know, and the people who were protecting her and the people who wanted her for malicious reasons are either dead within the Kaminoans. However, there are some Kaminoans who are still working with the Empire, and said those Kaminoans would certainly like Omega. So we don't know what Omega's fate is going to be, but it lends further credit to the fact that Boba may have some reason to soften up. And you're right, they are likely to tell that story. Now, there's a decent chance the Book of Boba Fett is also going to be a multi-season show. Yeah. So I believe it actually will, from what rumors tend to be, and everything seems to point out that it's season 1. And so I'm kind of expecting that if that's the case, that a storyline like that would definitely be a season 2 thing.
There's also an old Star Wars tradition of your lead character realizing he has a twin sister living under his nose, and that kind of recalibrating how he goes about his hero's journey.
Ah, look at that. Star Wars, it rhymes.
It tends to rhyme. So Tuskens are great in this episode, by the way. They're kind of like different looking from other Tuskens we've seen. They have like a regal kind of garb, these like black robes, and they have this watchdog, which is that a familiar creature?
Yep.
The thing that's following them around?
Yeah, it's a massive. They're in Attack of the Clones, and they were in Mando as well. That's a nice little nod, and they're very much just like dogs, and even have like the young Tusken. It's like a boy and his dog.
Right. Now Boba is their prisoner on 2 different occasions in this episode, because he is captured by them and then he breaks free and then they recapture him. He's physically bested a number of times in this episode.
He is, and it shows that he is going to become likely adopted into this culture more. Yeah. And it appears that they teach him quite a bit about hand-to-hand combat and your ability to succeed without the armor. And so it appears as though he's been relying on that armor quite a bit. And the new Boba that we have is much wiser and just much more skilled in it.
Yeah.
And that is a really interesting angle. I don't like him being bested so easily, but at the same time, he's pretty weak under these circumstances too. So that's not really fair. Yeah.
He's like probably got some poison in his lungs still at this point.
Yeah, he's had no Bacta and his skin is like rotting looking. And so it makes complete sense that he would get his ass kicked in also a duel of sticks. That is the last thing that he would ever use. He's a gunslinger first and foremost. And so or also a flamethrower user as well. But definitely, and also no jetpack. He doesn't have any of the tools. That's the thing is Boba is a Swiss Army knife.
Yes.
And we're going to learn how he becomes a club that he can just beat people with.
The digging for water thing is really interesting. Like this is kind of like part of his prisonership is that he just has to like dig with his hands. And obviously we know that there is the farming of moisture on Tatooine, but like that you can just like dig down in the sand and like maybe find a little pocket of water is kind of a new concept. Yeah.
Yeah. I looked it up because I had never seen this before, or I didn't know it was a thing. And it doesn't appear to have been a thing in Star Wars until this episode. So that is quite interesting because it seems like a significantly better way to get water than to moisture farm because there's none in the air. And they do seem to get quite a few every once in a while, but you never know.
So while they're digging for water, one of the other prisoners comes across this like scaly, what appears to be a fossil at first, and he uncovers a little more of it. And then it turns out to be the claw of a living beast that bursts through the sand. It has 4 arms and 2 legs. It's like 30 feet tall. And frankly, one of my favorite Star Wars creatures in many years. I just thought it was so, so cool. Do you know what this creature is?
No, it's brand new. It's like a centaur of some kind.
Yeah, I love it.
It is really, really awesome. Yeah, I don't think it's been named yet in Star Wars canon. I'm sure it'll be named pretty quick. But it is bloody cool. It's got maybe 4 legs, 2 arms, or 4 arms, 2 legs. I don't really know. But it's got a very rancorish vibe, but it's extremely Tatooinean because it's like a rancor and like a crate dragon. I thought it was going to be a baby crate dragon, but that would have been a little too. We've already seen that. I was happy it was something new. We saw a rancor come again in Bad Batch. That was in one of the episodes as well. We saw Jabba getting one of his many rancors because Jabba had a handful of rancors apparently. And so I'm expecting we're going to see things like that. It was cool to see him kind of wrangle it with a chain and strangle it in that regard. It was a new way of taking down a beast as well. Just overall, it was a cool sequence. And I thought it was a worthy cap off to the end of the episode to show that Boba's a badass. It still does show quite a bit of badassery and that he's learning to work with his hands and find the tools that are around him, be a little bit more of a MacGyver as opposed to, like I said before, a Swiss Army knife.
Right. And I guess the 2 timelines of this episode really strike a dichotomy of the 2 new skills he has to learn. One is like physical capability and the other one is diplomacy, because now he has this role of leadership, but like criminal leadership within Tatooine, except it's established that there is a connection between the criminal leadership of Tatooine and also the governance of Tatooine, because he's visited by basically the secretary of the local mayor. He's expecting a visit from the mayor directly. And in fact, he's expecting like an offering of cash from the mayor to essentially represent that he is going to kowtow to Boba. And that's not what he gets. He gets this representative of the mayoral office, who, by the way, was kind of like, he was maybe my one take back. I thought he was interesting, but he just talked a little too American to me. I don't know what it was, but he was a little bit too like feature player on SNL, the way he talked.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. I felt that it wasn't poorly acted,
No,
but it just didn't necessarily fit.
didn't strike a tone. Yeah.
And I didn't like the line, what? I'm the crime lord. He's supposed to pay me. As much as it was kind of funny, yeah, I thought it was too on the nose. And so I would agree that as much as I like a lot of the humor, especially between Boba and Fennec, I thought it was really good. Like the "yours is shinier than mine" line.
Right.
I didn't like the in particular exchange of both the "I'm the crime lord" and the weird kind of humorous tone, Alan Tudyk-esque vibe that I got from this guy.
Right.
It just didn't really fit. It should have been a little bit more sniveling.
Yes, it wasn't sniveling. It was just too casual. Although I think the scene itself is important. Had it been like executed a little bit differently, I would have no issues with it because I like the concept, and I suspect that this is going to continue to be an issue. The fact that you might get respect from peons, but he does not yet have at all the respect of the mayor, and so that's going to be really difficult in him being actually in charge around here. And by the way, like, do we have any predictions about who the mayor is or what that is? Because we're going to see this guy at some point.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure the mayor is probably the Ithorian that we see in the trailer.
Okay.
And I think it's the mayor is going to be voiced by might be voiced by Robert Rodriguez.
Oh, okay, cool.
I could be wrong on that. The mayor's name is Mokshays. And so this appears to be the potential main antagonist, or one of the main antagonists for the show. I'm going to gather is going to be is this the Imperial presence? Is this a mayor? Like, how has this mayor come to power? The Hutts rule. And so what is this power? Is it false power? In the past, it has been, because the mayor has been paying tributes to said crime lords in charge. And so what is this mayor done? This mayor does not seem like a very above board mayor. And also I've clued in, I think that the major domo, who we were talking with, the secretary, shouldn't have been a Twi'lek. I think that was part of the reason, that it was just too casual for a Twi'lek, because Twi'lek are supposed to speak French, or you're going to have like a weird voice like Bib Fortuna, where he speaks in Huttese most of the time. It was too American for a Twi'lek, and too casual. So it could have been a human, and it maybe would have worked.
Right. So it's really interesting. We have to learn more about what the dynamic is here, and if it's like this mayor just deciding now that he's going to rise to power, because it's like well established in gangster content that even though the crime boss is really in charge, there still has to be somebody behind an oak desk who appears to be in charge and is in fact just a puppet of the crime syndicate. Like, it's not hard to believe that exists on Tatooine. But what happened between Jabba and Boba? Well, Bib Fortuna did, but like, what did this guy kowtow to Bib Fortuna but not
no
Boba Fett?
That's likely the point. It's likely a matter of Bib allowed him to come in and set up shop in Hutt territory, and so Boba's like, wait a minute, it's always been run by the Hutts, and I take over the Hutts, and the one time I take over the Hutts, it was because I had to take it over from Bib fucking Fortuna, and he's god damn it. Like, that'd be frustrating under Boba's circumstances, but that's likely the circumstance that we've been given here. And also, who comes in to kind of kick their ass a little bit, although they are able to capture one of those people? Is that someone who is sent by the mayor? Or is...
I think there's probably a connection there.
A decent chance. Chance it's also Crimson Dawn, though, to me.
Oh, they are all red.
They are all red.
Yeah.
And Crimson Dawn plays a huge role in the Boba Fett comic arc, or the War of the Bounty Hunters comic arc that takes place between episode 5 and episode 6, and in terms of transporting Han Solo's carbonite. And I think I saw on Reddit, I didn't spend much time on Reddit, but I did think, someone seemed to think that Crimson Dawn cues from Dryden Voss's yacht, music cues, were used in that sequence.
But Dryden Voss is dead at this point. This is many years beyond the Crimson Dawn that we've previously seen.
True, but just in terms of cues that were clearly Crimson Dawn music cues, like to just like Crimson Dawn like theme, people said was repeated in that fight sequence.
Okay.
Maybe that's bullshit, but I didn't have a chance to verify it. But it did seem Crimson Dawn-y to me. And if that's the case, then that would make a lot of sense as they're still around at this time. And it would also make sense you can bring in Amelia Clark.
I was going to say that's Kira. That's older Kira.
Yeah, you can just age her up a bit, and she becomes the new baddie of the show. And that makes complete sense. And that totally works.
What about Fennec? How do we feel about her in this first episode? She's very much like she is in Mando. Like she's a badass, but she doesn't have a lot of dimensionality yet. I'd really like a little bit more Fennec backstory.
Yeah, I think we're going to get it. And I think I just am overall, I like the quippiness along with the badassery and the incredible believability of the badassery. Just in terms of the two of them are, it doesn't seem ridiculous for them to take down 6 people at all. And in order to be like as badass as they are, they really need to project a lot. And someone like Fennec is a new character next to Boba Fett. This is like, it's hard to be somebody who can project that same level of badassery along somebody who's been known as a badass for 40 plus years.
Right.
And so that's really, really important. And I think Fennec lives up to that along with good fun quips. And so that's what's made me happy so far. I agree though, if at the end of this season, there's not any kind of backstory or a little bit more understanding, I will feel disappointed that it's like, okay, don't create another Boba Fett by giving like this kind of cool shell of a character without a little bit of kind of meat under there. But Fennec has a life debt to Boba, and I think we'll likely learn more about that. And I think that will maybe endear us more to her. And she also, we do learn about her a bit more in Bad Batch, and that she does have a soft, just an inherent softer nature than some of the scum of the underworld.
But if the basis of her relationship with Boba, even if they're friendly at this point, like if the basis is a life debt, like she might turn on him at some point, and that might be a new motivation for her, because right now she's just like this person who like does whatever Boba needs. And yeah, she's charming and she's a badass, but we don't really know what motivates her. And so it could be interesting if that's what restores his lone status.
I don't think that's going to happen. That's interesting.
Yeah.
No, that would be very interesting if it turned out that in the end, because I mean, Fennec does try, like Omega doesn't realize it in Bad Batch, but Fennec tries to help her. And so in that way, or tries to kidnap her, but also is trying to help her at the same time. So I don't necessarily think that Fennec is going to turn on Boba. I think Fennec maybe has more of a connection in that regard, just as an overall, has a reason to want to work with Boba. But it would be really interesting if it turns out that there are, or maybe that Boba's familial relationships are extremely strained, and Fennec has allegiance to maybe other members of the Fett family over Boba. Maybe something like that could be interesting. Who knows? But that is the kind of twist that could, like, there's going to be some very, it can't be a completely predictable series. It was a predictable first episode, which I was okay with. But something like that would be an interesting twist. Absolutely.
And it was a predictable first episode because, as you mentioned before, a lot of what we got from the trailer is in this episode. Star Wars is really good for that. That like you'll think that you're being revealed too much, and actually like a good example is, gee, what does his helmet landing in the sand and spilling out a bunch of gold coins mean? Well, it actually means nothing. That was just like a gift that the town gave him, and then he had to put his helmet down while he fought some bad guys. Like it. Mm-hmm. That's the best kind of trailer tease, something that can completely divert your expectations. And there are some more things in the trailers we've yet to see, like the council meeting where he kind of brings in all the different bad guys and tries to establish an authority again. That'll probably be episode 2. But I
can imagine.
I don't feel like I have a lot of predictions for the story going forward, which is what you hope for.
Exactly. I think you're completely right. I think that will be the start of the next episode. And I think that will pretty quickly leave us with, okay, where's this going now? Yeah. And it's about building an empire, not the empire, but building a new kind of empire. And I'm really excited to see the way it's going to go. I think it was a good start. I really want a second episode, because I do feel like, okay, that's what I expected. But I'm obviously that's what I'm happy about, the format of once a week. So it'll wake me up. My internal clock will get me up at 4 a.m. again next week, and it'll be a good follow up. And I'm excited. 7 episodes. That is going to be 6 more. Where 5 of those 6, I have no idea what's going to happen in them. So that's pretty cool.
So 7 episodes takes us almost all the way through February, and then we're just a couple of months away from Obi-Wan.
We don't know for sure, but there seems to be a lot of rumor that Obi-Wan will be in May and that Andor will be in August, September. Yeah. And so that would align quite well to then also beginning Mando season 3 in December, probably.
And so by the way, can I just say, like, how great is it to have new Star Wars at Christmas again? It's been a couple of years since we've had that, and it fits. It's just what I want. I know it was only established in 2015, but like now my body yearns for new Star Wars at the holidays.
Yeah, well, we did have it last year with Mando, although I guess Mando was
ended then
finishing up around Christmas. Yeah. So it definitely does feel good, especially because January is a crummy, like, you want a good show this time of year. And so this will be a lot of fun to get excited about these next coming months. And I think the first episode was a good start. And so I'm certainly okay with that. Any other kind of things that stood out to you that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think we really hit on all the main points. I don't have any like quotes written down. I think they're struggling to, one that stands out to me is they're struggling to make out some of the foreign language because they don't yet have a protocol droid as like one of their servants in the palace. And so they're getting these visitations from like local people who are going to be subordinate to them. And Boba says, "Did you catch any of that?" And Fennec says something about friendship. And I thought that's kind of a funny name for this episode of the podcast. Maybe there's something about friendship, because like, obviously it's not a very friendly dynamic, either one, where Boba is trying to reestablish himself, but he does have a friend. And at the end of the day, that's kind of what he needs in order to be the Boba Fett that he aspires to be.
That's true. That's a good
allies.
Point. Yeah, absolutely. I like that. I like the lines, "May you never leave Mos Espa." Even when a Trandoshan pays you a compliment, it sounds like a threat.
Yes, I knew you'd pick up on that one, because that's a very Star Wars-y line.
Yeah, that's a great line. Yeah. Lord Fett offers the gift of your leave unmolested. I thought that was just in general an extremely Star Wars-y, powerful FU line delivered by Fennec. So I thought that was really good. And also calling him Lord Fett, I thought that was cool.
Lord Fett is, that's, I guess we called him Lord Jabba, didn't we?
Jabba was called a lot of things.
By Han and Luke.
Yes, and Luke and 3PO. Jabba gets called everything. Fennec's line of "yours is shinier than mine," I thought that was funny. And I did like the "Jabba ruled with fear, I intend to rule with respect" quite a bit. Those were all good lines.
What is the line where they're walking into town and Fennec says to Boba something to the effect of, "If you want them to respect you, you're going to have to learn to do things their way." And then he parrots it back to her when he agrees to hand over his helmet for servicing.
Yes, I didn't get to writing that one down in my rewatch, but that was good in terms of kind of forming to the way that they do things,
right?
As opposed to kind of being carried in as what everyone was expecting. So that
was good. We didn't talk about that it's considered a break of tradition that while he walks through town, he's not being paraded through town I mean, obviously, like Jabba was a fat slob, so and he was so vain, so it's not surprising that like he would have been like carried on like this kind of elevation, but Boba's too proud for that, and he's like I guess he's proud, but he also doesn't want to be praised necessarily, which I think is probably a virtue of his. He's not just like wanting power for power's sake or vanity. He wants to have earned it, and so walking was kind of symbolic of that.
Yeah, he's willing. He doesn't
Blue
need
collar roots.
Yeah, he doesn't need praise. He needs respect, and he's willing to offer that in exchange for kind of showing it himself. I also in general, just about the episode, was a big fan of one particular shot of Jabba's palace. It was, I think, a direct recreation of Macquarie art. And so it was just really cool to see it fully exact. It almost looked like the artwork. It became the page on screen, and so that was really cool. It got me excited because it was in the first couple seconds.
Speaking of bringing back old images, it was really gratifying when they show a flashback to like boy Boba Fett picking up the helmet of Jango Fett once again, which of course we've seen before. But there was a split second where they do a wide shot of him holding the helmet, and I thought for a second they were going to extend the scene because you can't really see the actor anymore, and it was just kind of his outline. And I'm like, oh, they definitely could like show him like at least pick up the helmet and walk out of the shot or something, like just to make it a little longer. And they could have done
that. Been awesome.
Yeah,
that would have been awesome.
Yeah.
Or like we said when we watched the episode, if the head fell out.
I've always found that kind of, I can't watch that scene without thinking, where's the head?
No, he wears this like turtleneck thing that would have kept it in place.
Hey, interesting, by the way, that his father was decapitated and he decapitates the enemy in this episode. Now it's like, it's a beast, but like, it's not a thing you see a ton of in Star Wars, decapitation, but it has now happened with Boba Fett a few times.
That is true, actually. And disintegrations were more his thing or according to Vader. So that one, that is a great point. I wonder if decapitation is going to be a bit of a thing. We'll have to keep an eye on that. I'm very intrigued to see more ties back to Attack of the Clone. That could be extremely interesting. There is a lot to farm there. And so, I mean, I don't think you can recreate anything of him that young, but
you can't recast the boy, can you?
No. You can do stuff though, where you're intentionally setting the time frame for him to be really young, as long as you just put him in, like, there was a point in time he's supposed to start wearing his father's armor at a pretty young age, at the end of the Clone Wars. And so he's only at that point like 13. And so you can still put him in the armor and get away with and have him as like a 15-year-old Boba Fett if you need to.
Big for him a little bit, like
and then it doesn't matter who the hell you cast, and you can like you can do whoever for the voice. You can modulate Tamora Morrison, you can get Daniel Logan back, you can do whatever you want.
It's a real gift that they have in the making of this show, and I think they should take advantage of it as much as they can, because they intend to make a multi-timeline series with Book of Boba Fett. That's why it's called The Book of Boba Fett, because it's a full story.
So that means
the fact that this character,
what that means,
for so much of this character's lore, he didn't have a fleshy face. Just like put the helmet on him and give us the full friggin' lifespan. I think that's great.
You just said it right there. He is going to die.
Yeah, maybe.
It's a Book of Boba Fett.
I was thinking about that earlier too, and I always have like a split feeling about when a character's death is retconned and then they do it differently, but they effectively did it with Darth Maul. So yeah, maybe they can give him a new death that's more final than the original Boba death.
Yeah, I've got a feeling that, I mean, obviously, if it looks like it's going to be multiple seasons, it's going to be a good death, and he's going to be the protagonist, so it's got to be a really good death.
Yeah, a
But
heroic death. Yeah.
if it's going to be the book of Boba Fett and it's going to be all the chapter, it just makes too much sense to not kill him at the end.
A book has an end.
Even if you do, Godfather Part 3.
Yeah.
There's no reason you can't
Just dies
show
of old age. Yeah.
If we're doing multiple timelines, there's no reason you can't jump to old Boba Fett and just show like, okay, you based on the last place we saw in the timeline and the last place we saw in the timeline,
right?
Okay, we can infer what happens in his older years, but we get to see his death, and boom, therefore we get to see the whole life of Boba Fett. They could do that.
Let's look at other Al Pacino crime movies, or like other De Niro crime movies, because like I don't know if you saw The Irishman, but it is like quite antithetical thematically to Goodfellas, which is essentially about you get into this world, you either die young or you go to jail. It ruins your life young. The Irishman is about how sometimes you live this life and you get so old that there's no one left, and you realize your existence was pointless and you're lonely. And it would be really interesting if Boba Fett, it would be sad and maybe a little bit antithetical to the character that they appear to be trying to build under the Disney scope. But it would be interesting if this story was about how Boba Fett got old and he died lonely.
Yeah, it absolutely could be that. I mean, that doesn't seem like a positive story. I figure there should be some form of lesson in there, even if it's for us, not for him.
Yeah.
That's okay. And that would be one of those things. But it would need to be a position. And I noticed they positioned Fennec's helmet in the opening sequence with so that like maybe further on Fennec won't betray Boba, but maybe Boba will betray Fennec.
Yeah.
And not necessarily betray Fennec, but betray values that they both kind of thought they were going to live by or something. Maybe Boba, right. and so maybe it we're left with a bit of a sour taste about Boba, but we learn it could be similar to kind of the way of Ahsoka's departure from the Jedi Order in the Clone Wars, where this is our also main character who kind of usurps our other main characters who we already knew as the moral like one, or the moral one.
Yeah.
So that could be the angle they're going for, but remains to be seen.
She might think that they have a good thing going, and he never really comes to see it that way, you know, like, like she might think that over time they grow to be equals, and he's like, well, no, we're not equals, and that's what divides them.
Yeah, that could absolutely be it too.
Yeah.
And then that could be part of what he realizes he never learned, right? But I think family is going to play a role in that, and I think Boba's going to learn some lessons. I think Boba's going to die, but I don't think any of that's going to be happening in one season. So I think it's going to be a long story, and I'm curious about the main arc of this first season. And I think this was a good start, though.
Me too. Any other observations about this pilot? Thoughts about the show going forward?
Nothing really. Just a couple. I guess I have some trivia if you want to do that.
Sure. You want me to not be able to answer your trivia questions? Sure.
A couple of them. Okay. At first, how many Tuskens emerged from the sandstorm to rescue Boba?
5.
4.
Okay. Yeah.
How many Banthas escort Boba to the Tusken camp?
2.
5. What was the name of the Trandoshan leader? The Trandoshan family leader, a protector of the city center and its business territories.
I don't know. I guess I remember them saying that, but I don't know.
Doc Strassi.
Okay. It also, like, I didn't watch this with subtitles, so some of this stuff doesn't retain.
Oh, that's fair. I watch everything with subtitles, so that makes it worse.
I will in round 2.
Doc Strassi calls Boba the new what?
I don't know. I'm not going to know any of these.
I didn't know what this word means. A daimyo.
Okay.
So they were feudal lords of powerful warrior bands.
All right.
And so
but that's not a Star Wars word. That's like an Our World word. Yeah.
So it just, I think it's a word, and it's a Japanese word.
Gotcha.
And so,
great.
Yeah. So that was kind of cool. And also, this is I'll just tell you this one, but the droid who was presenting them, who was presenting all of the people who are paying their tributes, is 8D8.
I like
and
that droid.
so, yeah, he's the droid who's torturing droids in Return of the Jedi.
Oh,
So the Gonk droid that's like,
yeah,
and is being branded. He's the one who's like pulling the lever to brand him.
he's the very same one because he appears to just be a pencil pusher in this episode.
Yep, he's the very same droid. He's part of Jabba's staff, and he remains around. So like EV-99, who was the droid in charge, is the one who he's the bartender at the cantina.
Right.
And so they all kind of disperse, but they're definitely keeping those consistent. And there's a droid that is an RX series pilot droid that was seen, and so there's a decent chance that same droid, because that droid was in the club. There's a decent chance that that's the same droid that's at Galaxy's Edge.
Oh, cool.
That's like a DJ, and so that's kind of cool.
And do you think they're going to get a protocol droid? Because you kind of hinted at that, and thus far there isn't a droid character in the show, which is an absolute essential in Star Wars stuff.
Well, there's 8D8, and I would be totally okay if 8D8 became a mainstay.
Which one is
to
that?
have 8D8's that like white pencil head looking droid, the one that used to be the torturer.
Okay, gotcha.
I'd be okay to have something that is like such an extreme background character, but one that is known like amongst like big canon nerds, that became a character. It would be like if like the way IG-88 and IG-11, but even more like even a level down from that of like an extremely obscure kind of character. So I think that would be cool. But you're right, there does need to be one. And so it would be, oh my God, it would be funny if they had little job interviews and then 8D8 applies for the job. And it's just like, well, I think I've learned from my time here that I think, and I have a programming chip that allows me, I don't have 6 million languages, but I have about 1.5 million languages. And I think based on the species that come, it could be kind of funny to have something that's a little bit of like it's about a crime family, and so the way they're hiring things, I could see an interview process for the way that they build their team, like they do in a lot of heist movies and whatnot. Right? How it's like, oh, what do you think you could bring to the team, sort of stuff, but in a Star Wars way that's not cheesy.
Yes, although do we want this to be such an ensemble as like even Mandalorian turned out to be like a team show, and I guess that was the point, is that we were kind of training him away from his loneliness, but like it is kind of implicit to Boba Fett that he remains something of a lone gunman even if he has a right-hand man. So like maybe
these are his underlings.
We don't want him to have like a big crew like Woody Harrelson has in Solo.
No. Yeah, these are his underlings. Nobody is going to be an equal, and even Fennec isn't. And like you said, that could be something that could come between them over time. She didn't seem too bothered, though, by his significantly shinier helmet in terms of having a bunch of doubloons in it. But it could come between them over time. But I think he could also just have a significant paranoia that won't allow him to be happy, that could get to under her skin, sort of thing.
Well, he's clearly harboring like a great pain and grudge that goes as far back as his dad. And so that's going to continue to show itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, I guess that's it for our Book of Boba Fett conversation number 1. Do you want to talk about anything in the news? We haven't done a podcast in like a month, so surely there's things to discuss.
There certainly are. We were going to do a podcast, and we certainly will still do it, just kind of talking about Star Wars video games and whatnot, since the announcement of Star Wars Eclipse. Looks like a very cool game, but unfortunately done by some pretty terrible people. A significant amount of information about racism and sexism, and just some bad stuff that you do, like photoshopping employees and compromising things like Nazi uniforms and swimsuits, and I'm sure other things. So it just seems like Star Wars, do your fucking homework and don't work with a studio like that and let them use your IP, because everyone got so goddamn excited, and now nobody with a it's like, how can you have a conscience and want to play this game? And like, I want to, but I won't want to. I won't support the company that it sounds like just an absolute horrendous studio. But also, apparently, there are a lot of rumors behind the scenes that they're having huge staffing issues because nobody wants to work there because it's such a toxic workplace. So my guess is that this game will never see the light of day. I'm gonna bet. I'd bet money that this story will find its way through another medium, and then they'll do another. They've had enough games on the way, and Star Wars has canceled enough games in the past that I can't foresee this one going forward.
But even with a full trailer, you think that'll happen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, some people think that the trailer was done to get the company purchased. And if that's the case, and the guys who run it get fired and they change everything over, and Star Wars is part of what gets them purchased, but part of what gets them on the right track, then yeah, that could change my mind. If a company completely eliminates the toxicity, but it sounds like it's run by those people. So TBD on all that. And unfortunately now TBD on any of my excitement for it. But it doesn't hamper any of my excitement and all the other things that are going on. Lots of casting news kind of going on in Ahsoka and stuff for the Acolyte. Small kind of like Maya Erskine has a small role in Obi-Wan and talked about that. Said Deborah Chow's amazing. And O'Shea Jackson Jr. talked about it's the best job he's ever had. And so many things to be excited about. Stellan Skarsgård talking about the writing in Andor being magnificent. Awesome. And so all of the things that are coming out television-wise seem to be going well and are nothing but cause for excitement. So although that annoying news with the Eclipse video game, which does look very cool if they can maybe get it done by a different studio, or if the studio were to have some massive changes, but lots to be hyped about other than that. So that's really cool.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Great.
I think we'll find, I mean, certainly next week there will probably be some more things in the news, maybe some more Boba Fett news that will be, or kind of information about what will come in the following episodes we might get from the next episode. So until then, I think that's all that's in the Star Wars world.
We'll just leave it there. I don't have my birthday calendar with me, and so we'll do a big birthday roundup for the last month of 2021 when we return for our podcast next week. And in the meantime, please send along your thoughts on this pilot episode of the Book of Boba Fett. Obviously, in fact, I think I'm comfortable saying that so far it's polarizing among Star Wars fans, and I mean that's not uncommon for any Star Wars content under the mouse. Is that fair to say? Like it's all going to be polarizing from here on?
Probably. However, Mando seems to have such overwhelming positivity, and I did see a poll recently about what's your favorite Star Wars Disney property, and it was overwhelming. 80% said Rogue One. Oh, his favorite movie. Sorry, so it didn't have Mando in the poll listing. But that's one that does seem to not have too much polarization on it. So 80%, with the second highest one being like 6%, which was Force Awakens. And so it just goes to show you that one does seem to have some consistency of love. Mando does too. And I'm hoping Boba Fett, if it doesn't at the moment, gets some consistency of love over the next few episodes. And I think it will. I think this is just a matter of expectations versus what you should have expected.
Yeah, just try to remember that pilot episodes are not here to satisfy all your cravings. Otherwise, there would never be a second episode. And so by next Wednesday, we'll be able to talk about episode 2 of the Book of Boba Fett. In the meantime, send along your thoughts. You can tweet us at recorder66, or you can email recorder66podcast@gmail.com. As always, rate and review on your preferred podcast app. And if you're joining us on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. And until we are together again,
may the Force be with you.